Hi, I'm Monica Langley with Office Hours Business Edition. Today I am featuring Angie Hicks, the founder of Angi, formerly Angie's List. So that's how you all may know her. Angie, welcome.
It was hard. And so one thing that I learned is you have to celebrate the small wins. And when I say small wins, I mean like small wins. So I was like, I need to sell one membership. We sold the homeowner memberships. The members paid at the beginning. And I was like, I have to sell one a day. And I was like, if I sold two a day, I was like, fireworks. And it was a huge excitement. But yeah, it was years later that I even gave myself credit for being an entrepreneur, because I did not think I possessed the skills that an entrepreneur needs to be successful, because I was exactly, you need to be a visionary, you need to be charismatic, you need to be a risk taker. And I was like, I would love to just sit here and work on a spreadsheet. It was personally very hard for me. It's like I had to figure out a way to go do things that were well outside my comfort zone.
Really?
And, so that's when, I kind of realized, like, the element that I think is kind of the trait of an entrepreneur that's not often talked about as much is perseverance. I do believe when it comes to what makes good leaders are leaders that are vested in their people and care about their people. You can do a lot of tasks at a lot of different companies. But what's going to make something special is whether you have a leader that cares about you. You do not raise money when you need it. You raise money when you don't need it. And it's so true. You need to be picky about who you choose to be your partners, especially in a private scenario. I mean, we had people that did not believe we could build this business in Indianapolis. And, fortunately, we were allowed to walk away from that VC money and say, you know what? This deal's not going to work for us because we do know we can do this. And when you're in the Midwest, it was like we got to stay more heads down and stay focused. And we're kind of outside of the flurry of activity that would happen on the coast. So I'm proud of what we were able to build from a Midwest perspective.
Speaking of human experience, I mean, the positive side of AI is you have skilled labor at the heart. I'm not going to have a robot come fix my sink.
It's going to be a long time before that happens. Yeah.
So, they are the ones least likely to be impacted by AI, I think.
Yes.
So, how do you deal with that?
Your home's your largest investment for most people. And, you live there. So there is a high trust element to inviting people into your home. And so that's always been the premise of the business is like, how do we help people get information in their hands to make smart decisions? As the brand was evolving, it was like we were becoming more than just a list. And, it was like, how do we make sure that the brand stays fresh? The internet came and, changed everything we were, but it was important for us when the internet came to be that it didn't define us. It was, it was a way for us to kind of execute on the business, but that kind of still that important, necessary finding pros that are reliable and that are right for you was always the most important thing. The home improvement market is huge. It's, it's a $700 billion industry. And so if you think about it, still the biggest competitor is actually an offline word of mouth world, right? Where you're just like, I'm going to ask my neighbor who they use, or I see a truck driving through town and I choose to call them. So there is that. It's been one of the slower industries to migrate online, but it's still moving further. But what we found was people, maybe they weren't doing a new landscaping project, but they were still doing all of the more basic things. They were having that furnace tuned up. They were repairing their roof. They were doing more maintenance type things because they didn't want to be surprised. And in an economy where you're like, I'm watching my dollars and I don't want surprise expenses, you tend to do some more of that preventative maintenance to protect that asset. And with the house being your largest asset, you're not just going to let it deteriorate. You're still going to put things into it. You're just going to do much more of the non-discretionary items versus versus the discretionary. That just means the inventory of the market becomes less because people aren't moving around, which can make it just harder to break in the market. And, that philosophy of like, hey, I want that little starter home, like, if you're going to live there 5 years longer than you expected, your starter home may not be your starter home. It might actually be your,
home for a while.
Home for a while. So kind of location and what it has, and some of those elements become even more important. All right, so here's my secret tip for you here. Maybe not so secret. Always think about the 3 T's when you're deciding whether to DIY.
What?
Do you have the time? Do you have the tools? And do you have the talent? And
okay.
You have to be honest. So if you say no to any one of those 3, you should hire a pro.